Properties is the one I want to stop at. We're going to pick up around page 177. I think it's around page 177 with their first defense against the dark arts with Snape. And Snape tells them, you've had 5 teachers in this subject so far, I believe. What does he mean he believes? He knows exactly how many they've had, you know. And Harry thinks, yeah, because Harry's smart-ass like I am. Naturally, these teachers will have all had their own methods and priorities. First 2 were horrible. Given this confusion, I'm surprised so many of you scraped an owl in this subject. And remember, what kind of owl did Harry scrape in that subject? Outstanding. So, he goes on and he talks about the dark arts. Are many, varied, ever-changing, and eternal. Eternal. Okay? Fighting them is like fighting a many-headed monster, which each time a neck is severed sprouts a new head, even fiercer. Hydra. Ancient Greek, not Marvel, but it works. So Snape says, your defenses must therefore be as flexible and inventive as the arts you seek to undo. Now, what does he mean by that? How can you learn to defend against the dark arts? Okay, you have to know them, possibly.
Be creative.
You got to be creative. You got to be fast on your feet. You can't merely go, oh, he's coming at me with a, therefore I will pull my mental store out, and that requires a, no. I mean, what did we see at the end of book 5 with Harry and his friends at the Ministry of Magic? They're using everything they know, everything Harry has taught them that year. Notice, they don't use anything they learned in, 1 through 3 years. Okay, because none of that really helps much. I mean, Lupin maybe a little bit. Moody helped him. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, he has to stay in character.
Yeah, but so he helped Harry get over the Imperious Curse, which was part of his job, but he didn't have to do it so many times where he perfected it. Because I don't know how he would think that would benefit.
Maybe Voldemort didn't want a patsy to simply roll over and, die easily. I don't know. It's a good question, I think. Okay? So, he talks about, he shows them, the pictures on the wall of all the, horrible ways to die. And they talk about Inferii. Has an Inferius been seen then, says Parvati. Okay? And Snape says he's used them in the past. You should be prepared for him to use them in the future. Little bit of foreshadowing. Okay? So, Hermione answers the question, memorized straight from the book. And so he goes on to teach them nonverbal spells. Harry smarts off, etc., gets in trouble as a result. So we're going to skip a bit, get to the end of that chapter, and Harry has a borrowed copy that was in the classroom library of the potions book, and it has written in the back of it, this book is the property of the Half-Blood Prince. Okay, there's a problem with that, however. What's the problem?
Who's that?
Louder?
There are no princes.
There's no aristocracy in the wizarding world like there is in the Muggle world. Really? Is there no aristocracy in the wizarding world? Maybe not blood aristocracy. Is there no aristocracy in the United States? Maybe not blood aristocracy. But there are certain people that others, quote unquote, look up to for a variety of reasons. So there's definitely a class kind of system. Who's really the only, I shouldn't say the only. Who's the greatest proponent of a classless society in the books? That is no distinction between rich and poor, between mudblood, pureblood, between magical, non-magical. Dumbledore. Okay? And yet, Dumbledore is one whose family can get traced back quite a long ways. Okay? So, very next chapter, Harry has his first lesson with his new private tutor, Dumbledore. Now, what is Harry, when Dumbledore says, I'm going to be giving you private lessons this year, what's Harry thinking? Okay, defense against the dark arts. What else? What did Harry see Dumbledore do at the end of the previous book?
Whip out a
Some
hellstorm.
seriously bad magic. I mean, not like in the stupid film. Yeah, just wrong. Okay. How did Dumbledore take care of, let's say, the Death Eaters in the Death Room? Yeah, just one little spell. You know, a little flick of the wrist, send something, and all of them at once. Meanwhile, in that room were Harry, Ron, Neville, Sirius, Hermione, and a bunch of other people, and they're fighting them and not doing so great. I mean, yeah, they're kind of keeping them at bay. And Dumbledore gets in and, and they're tied up and docile, in a corner, so to speak. And then Voldemort. We didn't even talk about that. We don't have time to talk about that. But we saw the battle with Voldemort. And it's not, where they're destroying the Ministry of Magic, etc. Okay? But does Dumbledore, in the book version, do we see Dumbledore, are we ever told Dumbledore raises his voice? No. How do we know he does it? Because it's not in all caps. If he raises his voice, it's in all caps. So, Voldemort's sitting there, throwing everything he can at him. Dumbledore's like, beep, 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 beep. Okay, Tom, can we get this over with? Okay. So Harry's thinking, I'm going to learn some great magic. This will be totally cool. And instead, what's he get? It's kind of like History of Magic. Only they're not going into Professor Binns' memories. They're going into Dumbledore's and others' memories. Yeah, right?
How did, Voldemort, rise to power if Dumbledore could just, his ass the whole time? How did he, let him get so powerful in the first time?
Yeah, I know. It's a good question. Other than the one thing we're told is it was, slow building, and he didn't come out in the open until he had his power. Other than the little bit we're going to be told in here. He already had his Death Eaters when he left Hogwarts. Dumbledore already had his doubts, and Dumbledore he kept an eye on him. But Dumbledore's kind of like Gandalf. Will Gandalf ever, quote unquote, kill someone? No, he won't. It's not his power. It's not his authority. It's not his judgment, or it's not his call to make that kind of judgment. In that battle at the end of Book 5, Voldemort notices Dumbledore's not using Avada Kedavra. And he goes, what? Too noble? The killing curse is that too beneath you? He goes, oh, no, not at all. What does he say?
Their fate's far worse than death.
Their fate's worse than death. And Voldemort says, nothing is worse than death. And Dumbledore says, that's where you're wrong. What's worse than death?
Dementor's kiss.
That'd be pretty bad. Because you're still alive. But you're not aware of it. Or maybe you are. Maybe you are aware. I mean, even though they say they suck the soul out of you. Maybe what is sucked out of you is all the happiness and everything, and all that's left is the I, capital, this, and then all the sorrow, but none of it can get expressed. Like you read accounts, hear stories of, people who are in comas for 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Or people who are in quote unquote permanent vegetative states. And they hear doctors come in, yeah, Fred here's a vegetable, he can't hear, do, blah, 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 anything. And then lo and behold, this has happened 5 times over the last 20 years. Fred comes out of that permanent vegetative state and can think and can talk, and after some therapy can walk. And what does Fred say? I heard every single GD word you said. I heard every joke that a nurse made at my expense. I heard. So, maybe not. Would that be a fate worse than death? To be confined and not be able to say, hello, I'm here? Yeah, that'd be pretty bad, especially for somebody like Voldemort, okay? So, we get the House of Gaunt, and Harry goes to meet with Dumbledore, and Dumbledore says, don't worry about your detention, you'll get into it later. So, he says, you've been wondering what I planned for you during these lessons. Harry's like, oh, yeah. Dumbledore says, well, now you need to know what prompted Lord Voldemort to try and kill you 15 years ago. This is around 197 or so. To give you certain information. Harry's like, wait, stop, pause. I mean, we're nearly 200 pages into my next book here, Dumbledore, and you told me at the end of the last book, you told me everything. And so I did. I told you everything I know. From this point on, he says, we shall be leaving the firm foundation of fact and journeying together through the murky marshes of memory into thickets of wildest guesswork. Notice he likes the alliteration, kind of a flair. Mm-hmm. So from here on in, Harry, I could be as woefully wrong as Humphrey Belcher, who believed the time was ripe for a cheese cauldron. Just let that one sit for a moment. But you think you're right. How many people do you know that you talk to and they make a point about something and then they go, but I know I'm completely wrong? Of course we think we're right when we make a statement. Unless we're lying and intentionally lying and know that we're lying, but we're trying to make that point to somebody else that they might not know. Okay? So, and Harry's like, and this has something to do with the prophecy, right? Because what's the prophecy? Neither can live while the other survives, right? And Harry interprets that at the end of book 5. He says, so that means, because he simplifies, one of us has got to kill the other. Dumbledore's like, yeah, that's it. One of you's got to kill the other. Harry's like, damn. Okay. So Dumbledore says, yes, but I make mistakes, and my mistakes tend to be correspondingly huger. That is because I'm such a brilliant person. When I'm wrong, it's going to be a brilliant wrongness, so to speak. Harry, and it's got something to do with the prophecy. It'll help me survive, right? Yes, I think so. So he puts the pensive, and Dumbledore goes, Harry, you look worried. We're not told what Harry's done. Harry had indeed been eyeing the pensive with some apprehension. That is, we're not told he puts the pensive down and Harry kind of backs away. What are Harry's experiences so far with the pensive? Okay, his most recent one, seeing his dad act like a jackass.
Yeah, how about Death Eater trials?
Pardon?
Death Eater trials.
And previous to that, the Death Eater trials. Okay? So, Dad was a jerk, and Neville's parents were killed by bad people. Yeah. Okay? So, Dumbledore says, don't worry, Harry. Now, yes.
I feel like, I don't know, I haven't read all the Harry Potter books, so all of this stuff is like super new to me. But just knowing from like Harry Potter's like character development, because I haven't seen any movies except for like up to this point. But I don't think he has like the capability to kill somebody.
Well, that's going to be an interesting point. What else did the prophecy say? Anybody have it in front of them?
He'll have the power the Dark Lord knows not.
He'll have a power the Dark Lord knows not. The Dark Lord will mark him as his equal. Neither can survive while the other lives. And then Dumbledore says about this, it will take uncommon, anybody know? Skill and I wasn't prepared to talk about this. Draw a blank. Uncommon skill and something else. Might be power or strength. Okay. To defeat the Dark Lord. And I'm going to suggest, thank you, Brandon, for bringing it up, that Harry's uncommon skill has everything to do with his inability to kill. Harry's uncommon skill? What's the power that Harry has that the Dark Lord knows not?
Mercy.
Nope. Love. That's why Dumbledore says at the end of that passage, you know, there's a room in the Department of Mysteries that the door is always kept locked. Okay? Notice, it's always kept locked. So how do you get in? Do they apparate? I don't think so. I think he means this is a mystery within the Department of Mysteries that cannot be what? You can't study it. How do you study love? Read Shakespeare's sonnets? Read great love poetry? No. Okay? And he says, Harry, you've got this in spades. You've got so much more of this. And Voldemort knows it not. We're going to see in this book where Dumbledore and Voldemort are going to talk about this. Okay? So, they go into the pensive. And they're going down Bob Ogden's memory lane, so to speak. Okay? They go to Little Hangleton. And where do they go? They go to the Gaunt House. If someone is gaunt, what does that mean? Shriveled, thin, usually from hunger. Okay? And who do we meet there? Marvolo, Morphin, and Maripay. Notice the alliteration with their names, okay? Who's Marvolo? The father, okay? Morphin is his son. Maripay is his daughter. Okay? Pardon? So we see what happens, okay, and skip a bit, go to about page 211. Dumbledore taps Harry on the shoulder. They come back up out of the pensive. What happened to the girl in the cottage? Why does Harry think of the girl? She was mistreated. She was abused. She was neglected. Harry knows what that's like. Maripay, or whatever her name was. Oh, she survived. Marvolo, who had injured, and Harry says, Marvolo? Dumbledore goes, yeah, good job, Harry. You're keeping up. Wait. So this guy was Voldemort's grandfather. So, V's ma? That's right. His son Morphin, his daughter Maripay were the last of the Gaunts. Very ancient wizarding, blah, 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 blah. So, Harry's putting two together. So, Maripay was Voldemort's mother, and the Muggle must have been Tom Riddle. Okay? So, they hook up, essentially. She gets knocked up. She has a child whom she named, because she's still kind of in love with him, and she gives him her father's middle name, Tom Marvolo Riddle, which is kind of odd, to me at least. Her father's such a horrible person. Why would she give her son his middle name? Anyways, so Harry says, so she was Voldemort's mother. It does. And did you catch his father, the Muggle, the man on the horse? Very good. They ended up married? Harry's like, how? Unable to imagine two people less likely to fall in love. Really? I can think of two people less likely to fall in love that we saw in book 5 in a pensive. What about James and Lily? What does James say? Come on, go out on a date with me and I'll leave him alone. And she said, not if you're the last man alive. That's pretty harsh. So Harry's like, how? How did these two fall in love? Well, what have they been learning from Slughorn? I almost said Snuggleface or whatever that is. Slughorn. Love potions. Notice what Harry thinks of first, though. Imperious Curse. How would an Imperious Curse be better than a love potion? More control. With an Imperious Curse, what do you do to the other person's will? Gone. It's gone. It gets replaced with yours. You will love me. I will love you. And that's it. You have to keep doing it, though. Just like you have to keep giving them a love potion. Okay? So Dumbledore says, yeah, I think it was a love potion. I think it would have been more romantic, So he goes on and talks, and Harry says, wait, but she died, didn't she? Wasn't Voldemort brought up in an orphanage? He says, yes, indeed. Notice a little bit of guessing here. All the puzzle pieces aren't there, so we got to fill in some. Okay. When they heard what he was saying, the villagers guessed that Marape had lied to Tom Riddle, pretending she was going to have his baby, and that he'd married her for this reason, Harry. But she did have his baby. Yes, she did. But not until a year after they were married. Okay. Let's step outside. Do you know where I'm going with this, Katie? Let's step outside the world of Harry Potter for a second, and let's go to the world of J.K. Rowling for a second. Anybody know her history? Her background? She gets her degree. She goes to work for Amnesty International. She works in Portugal, I think it is. Portugal or Spain. Okay. She meets a dashing, handsome young journalist. Whirlwind romance, like 3-month romance. They get married. Okay.
After 3 months?
After 3 months. After about 6 months, he leaves her. But she's pregnant. Okay. He goes off. She goes back to the UK. Quote unquote, metaphorically, tail between her legs. Chastened and chastised and such. And is an unwed mother. Yes, she was wed when the child was conceived. But when the child was born, she's divorced. Which even in some people's eyes, I still boo his, strumpet slut, etc., etc. Okay? I could be way out on a limb here. But I think J.K. Rowling is getting a little back at her ex here with this depiction. Okay? I could be wrong, but the parallels are really, really strong. Okay? So, Dumbledore says, in response to Harry's question, why did the love potion stop working? I think she made the choice to stop giving him the potion. Why? What did Marape want from Tom Riddle? Real love. Not love that you get out of a bottle. Perhaps besotted as she was, she convinced herself he would by now have fallen in love with her in return, but he doesn't. Okay? Dumbledore says, All right, Harry, we're done for the night. Harry's like, okay. And this is going to help me, right? This is going to help me stay alive, knowing this about Voldemort's past. Very important. And it's got something to do with prophecy. Uh-huh. So can I tell Ron and Hermione? He goes, yeah, I think so. And then Harry notices the ring. Sitting on one of the little spindle-legged tables that sported so many other frail-looking instruments was a big, ugly gold ring set with a large, cracked black stone. Harry says, that ring, wait, you were wearing it when we visited Slugger. Yeah, but isn't that the same ring Marvolo Gaunt showed Ogden? He says, yes. Have you always had it? No, acquired it recently. Gee, about the same time you injured your hand, right? Yeah. How? Good night, Harry. Notice, he lets Harry ask just enough questions to get him to a certain point and then stops him. Why? Doesn't want to tell him yet.
He wants them to be curious.
Wants him to be curious, wants him to piece things together, because he's going to need to piece those things together when we get to the end of the novel. Keep in your mind as you read the entire thing. Spinner's End. What's it refer to? It doesn't it does refer to a place. It refers to something more than that, though. Okay? Chapter 11, Hermione's Helping Hand. I don't want to say much, I don't think, about. Let's see here. Towards the end of the chapter, around 235. What happened to Katie Bell as she was leaving Hogsmeade? She was given a necklace that was cursed. She's essentially attacked by it. Who does Harry think is behind it? Who does Harry think is behind everything? Malfoy. Okay. So Harry says Malfoy probably got that when he went on Draco's detour. Remember that chapter that we didn't discuss? When he went into not Flourish and Blots. Bergen and Berks. I always say Bergen and Berks for some reason. And Hermione says he couldn't have. That is, he couldn't have brought something like that into the school through the front gates. Harry's like, well, why not? How can he have done, Harry? We were all searched when we arrived, weren't we? Were you? I wasn't. Oh, no, of course you weren't. I forgot. You were late. Well, Filch ran over all of us with secrecy sensors when we got into the entrance hall. Any dark object would have been found. Well, why wasn't Harry searched? He didn't walk in with Tonks. Tonks walked him to the gates. And who met him there? Snape. Okay? So Harry wasn't wanted. Why not? Oh, should I ask that question? No, I should not. Don't want to give it too much away yet. There's a reason why Harry wasn't asked that question. It has something to do with Voldemort put a bit of himself into me? So, Silver and Opals. Harry is practicing in this chapter some of the spells in the Half-Blood Prince's book. Okay? Like Leve Corpus on Ron in his bed. Leve, like levitate, corpus body. And then he, finds the one to drop him back down. Hermione thinks he shouldn't be using that book. Never know who he is. He might have been a budding Death Eater, etc., etc. Somewhere around 243. Actually, it's not the first one because I pointed that was early. Never mind. They're at Hogsmeade. They're in Hogsmeade, and Ron's enchanted with Rosmerta. We get Silver and Opals. Okay, go on to because I'm trying to cover a lot. Chapter 13, The Secret Riddle. Okay, so Harry has another lesson with Dumbledore. In a couple pages into the chapter, this is around 260 or so, Dumbledore says, "You will remember, I am sure, that we left the tale of Lord Voldemort's beginnings at the point where the handsome muggle..." So notice what he's doing. Recapping from last time, bring you back up to speed, jog your memories, etc., etc. Okay? So, Dumbledore talks about knowing Merope was in London. Harry says, "How do you know?" Talks about, she sold her locket to Burke. And Harry says, after that long paragraph, Caractacus Burke was not famed for his generosity, says Dumbledore. So we know that near the end of her pregnancy, Merope was alone in London, desperate need of gold, desperate enough to sell her one and only valuable possession, locket that was one of Marvolo's treasured family heirlooms. Harry, but she could do magic. She could have got food and everything for herself by magic, couldn't she? Well, we learn in book 7, you can't conjure food out of nothing. You have to have ingredients, at least of a sort. But that's not what Dumbledore's getting at when he responds. He says, perhaps she could. But he says, I think when Tom Riddle left her, she stopped using magic. Why? Because she wants to be one of these. She somehow has it in her mind, if she was no longer a witch, maybe Tom Riddle would come back to her. Of course, it's also possible her unrequited love and the attendant despair sapped her of her powers. So notice, despair can take away a wizard's powers, or a witch's powers. Harry, Dumbledore goes on. In any case, as you're about to see, Merope refused to raise her wand, even to save her own life. Right? Pretty much, most people say, or many people say, I don't want to use violence, etc., but I'll use it to protect myself, or if I see somebody, maybe in threat of, permanent harm or death, I'll use deadly force, kind of a thing. Dumbledore says she wouldn't even use magic to save her own self. Harry, she wouldn't even stay alive for her son. Screw her. What about her child, her son? She wouldn't stay alive for him? Notice, could you possibly be feeling sorry for Lord Voldemort? No, said Harry quickly. Why does he say it quickly?
Because he was kind of caught.
Caught? Why else? He says it how? Unthinkingly. No. Why? I don't want anybody to think I'm feeling mercy or pity for Voldemort. He's slime. He deserves death,
He's starting to get humanized.
Starting to get humanized? I mean, this is Frodo and Gollum. When Gandalf's talking to Frodo about Gollum. But she had a choice. Not like my mother. Really. Let's go back for a moment to Harry's mother. No, not Harry. Take me instead. What did she give Voldemort there? She gave him a choice. She had a choice.
That's different, though. The choice was like her life or his life in her eyes.
Okay, let's entertain that notion for a second. Do you really think Lily thought Voldemort would go, yeah, cool. I can go after her because the prophecy, oh, no, it's not about him at all. It's about her. Yeah. No. Doesn't work. He was the one born at the end of the 7th month to parents who had thrice defied him. Are we ever told how Harry's parents thrice defied Lord Voldemort? No. We have no idea what that means. Unless she goes off in Pottermore somewhere, okay? Which I don't get into. So, your mother had a choice too. Yes, Merope Riddle chose death in spite of a son who needed her, but do not judge her too harshly here. Harry, she was weakened. She never had your mother's courage, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So, what does Harry see? Harry sees Dumbledore go off to the orphanage, and we meet the what do we want to call her? The owner? We don't know that she is. The proprietor, the runner of the orphanage. What is this woman's name? It's very Dickensian. Dickens had names for characters like Gradgrind, Churlman. In other words, their names describe the character. Her name is Mrs. Cole. Okay? Like hard and flinty, like coal. And what particular habit does she have that she shares with Harry's Aunt Marge? She's a drunk. See, drinking doesn't imply drunk. One can drink and not be a drunk. She's a drunk. She smells like what? Gin. That is, you come close enough, like, oh, sure, that gin, man, that's real. Right? No, you don't want to. Okay? Describe the orphanage. Cold, dark, bad. Is there a play? Is there love there? No. No. So we see a young Dumbledore show up, and he talks to Mrs. Cole, and he talks to young Tom Riddle. Tom Riddle is 11 years old at this point. And Dumbledore tells him what? He says, you're different. What's the word he actually uses? You're special. And Tom Riddle's like, damn right. I am special. Here, watch this. And he tries to use a spell on Dumbledore, but he doesn't have a wand. But when he speaks, even Harry, in the memory, can feel the power. Okay? And what do we find out young Tom's been doing? And stealing, torturing both kids and animals. Dead rabbits, I think, or a cat or something. Okay?
Oh, yeah, you found a rabbit from the rafters.
What is, in almost universally this applies, when a serial murderer or killer is caught, what do they find out? Go back to that person's childhood, and what do you find? A string of dead bodies, you know? Okay? So, Dumbledore has to prove to him that he's magical, so what does he do? Makes the wardrobe burst into flames. He's like, cool, where can I get one of those? You know, flamethrower like wand thing, okay? So, about 4 or 5 pages before the end of the chapter, we're told he dislikes the name Tom. He says a lot of Toms. Was my father a wizard? He was called Tom Riddle too, they've told me. Dumbledore, I don't know. My mother can't have been magic, or she wouldn't have died. So, at the age of 11, he equates what?
Magic with immortality?
Or at very least with life. Non-magic, because if you're magical, you shouldn't die. Okay? So, they come out of the memory, and what do we see? Dumbledore kind of helps Harry interpret what he's just seen. Harry's like, man, he believed it a lot faster than I did. I mean, it took me a while to believe what Hagrid was saying. Dumbledore's like, okay, so why do you think that is, Harry? Well, he already thought he was so special. Cool, yes. What else? I can make them hurt if I want to. He was a Parselmouth. Yes, okay. What else? He didn't like the name Tom, which takes us back to the end of Book 5, and that's exactly why Dumbledore says, it was foolish to come here tonight, Tom. Now, if Dumbledore really wanted to turn the screws, what would he have done?
Use his full name?
No. Me, Tommy. Tommy is the diminutive form. That would really be putting him back in his 11-year-old self. But he doesn't say, it was foolish to come here tonight, your dark lordshipness, or Lord Voldemort. He doesn't call him what he wants to be called. Notice. Okay? So, Harry says you also, Dumbledore says you also notice he was secretive, not secretive. He didn't have stuff coming out of him. He was secretive. He was self-sufficient, friendless. Okay. He goes on, last page, says, his Death Eaters will say that they are in his confidence and that they are his friends. They are deluded. Lord Voldemort has never had a friend, nor do I believe that he's ever wanted one. Why? Having a friend indicates what? Somebody said it. Love.
I would have said that, like,
And
somebody who wants to live forever thinks they just can't have friends. Because they know their friends
friends
ain't gonna live.
aren't going to live forever. Because if you have a friend, if you have love, then, I heard this said, you do have weakness, right? If you love somebody, what does that give them over you? In one sense at least. How much? Here's my heart. Be gentle to it. It's still beating. I'd like it back at some point, And instead, every country music song in the world. She stole my heart, stomped that sucker flat, Because you become vulnerable when you love. He's not going to be vulnerable. Not at all. Okay? Felix Felicis, which is what? Good luck potion. Okay? Harry's having thoughts about Ron's sister. Let's see here. He gives Ginny a big hug. 298, 299. We'll skip that whole chapter. Chapter 15, the unbreakable vow. Okay? Let's see here. Talking about the prince. Page 318. Harry's speaking with Slughorn. And Slughorn makes a comment. This is at Slughorn's party. Slughorn makes a comment about Harry. Well, let me back up. Trelawney does first. She says the rumors, the stories, the chosen one. Of course, I've known for a very long time, etc., etc. And Slughorn says about Harry, I've never known such a natural at potions. He's instinctive, like his mother. I've only ever taught a few with this kind of ability. Why, even Severus. What does that mean, why even Severus? Even he wasn't as good as Lily. Okay, now Snape taught potions for how long? This is he taught for 14 years in the previous book, so he's now in his 15th year. 14 years! He ought to be. And he's saying, well, even Severus. I think what that means is, even as good as Snape is, Lily had something on potions. Okay? I wish she would do a prequel, not Pottermore nonsense, but real prequel, and take us back to the end of James and Lily's, let's say, 7th year, or take them into their 7th year where they've patched over all the bad stuff of the 5th year, okay, and they get ready to get married, and how we see them defeat Voldemort 3 times, etc., etc. Okay? Anyways, so Harry tells Slughorn the courses he's taking. He says, all the subjects required for an aura. Harry says, yes, okay. Filch comes in, page 321, and Harry notices Malfoy and Snape. And then he notices Malfoy's got dark shadows under his eyes and a distinctly grayish tinge to his skin. Okay? And he goes off, Harry does, and he spies on him. Okay? He eavesdrops. What does he hear Snape and Malfoy talk about? Snape keeps telling Malfoy, let me in. Let me know what you're doing. Let me know what you're planning. Malfoy keeps saying, no. And Snape looks at him funny, and Malfoy says, I know what you're doing. Just stop it right now. He's trying legilimency. Malfoy obviously knows occlumency. Okay? Page, probably around 323. Snape tells Malfoy, I'm trying to help you. I swore to your mother I would protect you. I made the unbreakable vow, Draco. Well, then he says you'll have to break it. Well, what happens if you break an unbreakable vow? I don't need your protection. It's my job. He gave it to me. I'm doing it. So what's your plan? None of your business. Why not confide in me? I know what you're up to. You want to steal my glory, etc., etc. Harry hears all this, and what's he think? What's he up to? Okay. What was the unbreakable vow?
To protect Draco and to carry out the deed if he fails.
To do the deed if Draco fails, so that Draco won't die. Okay. And to protect Draco. Do we know in that chapter at the beginning of the book what the deed is? No, we don't. Okay? So, this is where we're finally told, chapter 16, first page, what Harry says about the unbreakable vow. Well, what does it mean? Well, you can't break an unbreakable vow. He's like, really? Thanks. I never would have guessed that. Ron, you die. Fred and George tried to get me to make one when I was about 5. How many years ahead of Ron are Fred and George? So they would have been 7. I nearly did too, holding hands with Fred and everything when Dad found us. He went mental. What do you need?
No, they probably took a one. Because at the Quidditch World match, we saw that one little boy take his dad's wand and get yelled at.
True.
I mean, they regularly still, they've stolen their dad's wand before anyway. Like they said, that's the reason why
True.
I'm scared of spiders.
True. And yet, what does Ollivander say about wands?
They choose the wizard, but you can still use them.
You can to some extent. Witness, no, not semantic. In book 7, it's not semantic. What happens when Harry tries to use Hermione's?
Just doesn't agree with
It doesn't work very well. Now, is that because he's Harry Potter, the Chosen One, and he has to have Harry Potter, the Chosen One's wand? Does it put the Chosen One TM, on it? So why can some people use other people's wands, but other people can't?
Maybe they're close enough in personality and mindset to be.
Maybe.
Maybe like the willingness of it.
Maybe.
Because I mean, that other wand he was using, like he could be like a Borgio or something.
What about Voldemort?
Maybe
Book 7.
just if the wand likes them or not.
Sell your wand, Selwood. What, my wand? Malfoy, your wand. Nah, it doesn't. And there's a more particular reason why. Okay? But it's clear the wand really has to be the person's wand in order to channel what? The person's magic, okay? So leave the wand out of it for a moment. What kind of magic is an unbreakable vow?
Powerful.
That's a powerful one. That's a strong one. That's not one you learn first year. There's 7.
They're pretty smart. I don't know.
It becomes a chaos thing, other stuff.
I just think it's poor writing on her part. She doesn't have it all plotted out, okay? In terms of some of the things she says, and then when she gets to later books, she's, kind of creates, tries to solve things. Okay, so, very frosty Christmas. Harry goes off to the Weasleys, and let's see, when is this? Do I not have a page number? I don't. So it is 20 pages and about. Somewhere around 331 to 333, I'd say. So Harry, they're sitting around the table, I guess, and Lupin is there. Arthur Weasley's there. Not Malfoy. Mrs. Weasley and some of the other Weasleys. And Harry's talking to Mr. Weasley and Lupin about what he overheard. between Snape and Malfoy. And Mr. Weasley says, has it occurred to you, Harry, that Snape was simply pretending? Pretending to offer help so that he could find out what Malfoy's been up to? Yeah, I thought you'd say that. And then he asks the question, but how do we know? How do we know that's the case? Lupin, it's not our business to know. It's Dumbledore's business. Dumbledore trusts Severus, and that ought to be good enough for all of us. Okay? But, just say, humor me for a moment. Dumbledore's wrong about Snape. People have said it many times. It comes down to whether or not you trust Dumbledore's judgment. I do. Therefore, I trust Snape. So, Dumbledore trusts Snape. I trust Dumbledore. Therefore, I trust Snape. That's Lupin's logic. That's the logic he's using there. Okay? Excuse me. Dumbledore trusts Snape. What did Harry say? Dumbledore may be wrong. Lupin skips that step. Okay? He says, I trust Dumbledore. Harry, but Dumbledore can make mistakes. He says it himself. He looks at Lupin and says, come on, you don't like Snape. He goes, doesn't have anything to do with liking or not. I'm speaking the truth. We'll never be bosom friends. After everything that occurred between James and Sirius Severus, there's too much bitterness there. But I don't forget, for the whole year I taught at Hogwarts, what did Snape do every month?
Made the potion.
And he could have what?
Screwed with it.
Oops! Forgot an ingredient. Darn. But he accidentally let it slip that you're a werewolf. Come on. And I think when Lupin says, news would have leaked out anyway, I think, one, he means it seriously, but I think he also means, can you really blame him? I mean, look at what Snape kind of suffered at the end of that. He thought he was what? Getting Sirius Black. He seriously thought Sirius Black was guilty. Okay? Hard thing to accept that he wasn't. So, Lupin says, you're determined to hate him, Harry. Why? With James as your father and Sirius as your godfather, it's almost like you are genetically predisposed against him. Okay? This is the question that is going to come up now several more times in this book. And this is the question that is going to plague Harry in Book 7. And it's going to be connected with this. How do I know Dumbledore was right? How do I trust Dumbledore? Because of what happens at the end of this book. After Dumbledore, I'm going to give it away, after Dumbledore dies. Okay? And after Dumbledore dies, at whose hands?
You want to say it?
Well, we're going to get there eventually. Snape. When Harry sees, notice by the way the difference between the book and the film. In the book, where is Harry? Excuse me, in the film, where is Harry?
Like under the stairs.
He's underneath the roof. Snape comes up, he sees Harry, what's he do? And Harry's not under the impedimenta curse. So he thinks Harry's really just going to be quiet because Snape asked him to? That's utterly ludicrous. In the book, Harry is where? He's on the platform.
Underneath the invisibility cloak.
But he's stunned. He can't do a thing. And he witnesses it all. Okay? Dumbledore trusts Snape. Snape kills Dumbledore. Who do I trust? Who do I know? How do I know? It's a basic problem in what's called the epistemology branch of philosophy. How do you know what you know? Is it simply logic? Is it empirical through your senses, through your eyes? Because Harry's seeing something, right? Only problem is what? We might not see what we think we see. Because what does Harry not see there? Into book 7. Okay? All right, we'll stop there. And pick up at the end of that chapter, Very Frosty Christmas, when Scrimgeour comes in.